I went through a young lawyers leadership class, and I found that when you know that someone important believes in you and that you have that support system, it does wonders for your confidence and your stability.
I'll have what she's having.
Welcome to another edition of
She Talks Confidence
Podcast.
Welcome back. This is Tony. This is She Talks Confidence podcast. Another fantastic guest today. It's criminal trial attorney Nicole Knox. Nicole, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I can't wait to jump into this because actually you threw a curveball at me and I love it. I love what you brought to the table in terms of what we're going to talk about today. And it's going to be about fear and resiliency. Why is this such an important topic for you? And what have you faced as a corporate trial attorney and through your escalation into where you're at now that this has come up and you've figured out how to do it?
As a criminal defense lawyer, where I speak to juries all the time and I need to convince them to find my client not guilty. So I have to be able to speak to them, not only so that they listen to me, but also the judge and the prosecutor, and so that I gain the respect of them so that they will not only listen to me, but then take it back and fight for me and my client. Also, as a former president of the Dallas Women Lawyers Association, I learned so much about the inequality of women. I call it the illusion of equality that we are under today. There's so much attention on how far we've made it, but we really haven't made it anywhere except for Title IX, in my opinion.
You think so?
For
You think
example,
do you think a lot of it is just for show, or ultimately when push comes to shove, the system takes over?
I think probably it was the ERA actually never passed fully.
True.
The
Yeah.
Equal Rights,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
didn't even realize that until several years ago. But
Mhm.
I think it's political. I think it's also, we still want to motivate women to think that we are equal, but the pay gender gap still exists. For example, even at the highest level of women lawyers, the managing partner level, only 4% are women, and they
Wow.
still make 89 cents on the man's dollar.
It's
So
really
until
even
that's
even even with lawyers at that level, it's still 89%. Is it really?
and
Wow.
you're talking like top 100 law firms,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Big deal, like where there is no discrepancy other than pay. But so it became important to me to fight for the advocacy of women, to also learn how to convince people that this is something we have to listen to. People make society. Society doesn't make people. So we can change this. It's gonna not happen today, but if we all get behind it, and especially if women support women, magic happens. Because if women can't get behind women, then we're gonna have a really hard time reaching the men.
I've had a lot of situations where I've talked to professional women that are high up C-suite type, and they have indicated that there's, interestingly, when they get to a certain level, it's not at the very top, but it's as they're getting there, they come across the fact that it's almost like a dog eat dog type of a thing where the women start being more competitive than being more supportive. Have you found that? And what does it take for women to just stop doing that and understanding that they need to support each other in those environments it's the rising tide lifts all the boats type of a thing?
That is such a great question, and I'm so glad you asked it. What I found is at the lower level, like at the associate level for lawyers, it's like a cheerleading camp. You're all together supporting each other. You're all in it, and you don't know what you're doing. When you get to like the C-suite level, like the mid-manager level, then it is a dog eat dog world, and everybody's trying to. it- Women get catty, right? We can get sassy. We can speak while people aren't listening, and we can use words in ways that they shouldn't be used. But then once you reach the top, you find kinda you revert back to the associate level where because there's so few of you that you're helping each other.
Yeah.
You're trying to help anyone else underneath you. And that's where I think it really comes in, is that the leadership of the women at the top and supporting the women at the bottom is how that's the only way to really fill that gap.
Have you dealt with a situation to where the women at the top have coalesced, they have come together, they have created the tribe, the mentorship, and how can that be expanded? Because that, I 100% agree, is what needs to happen. We have to lead from the top in this situation.
When I was the president of Dallas Men Lawyers, I realized this was a problem. So I created a leadership class for women law students who wanted to practice in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And it was for the pure fact of we only took 12. So I did this 10 years ago. It's still existing today. We only take 12 law students a year. They don't have to pay anything and they get access to the best lawyers, federal judges, state judges, mentoring. We do personality tests, professionals. It's a total just support system. And all of them who have graduated from my class are thriving as lawyers. Because I found that when I went through a young lawyers leadership class, and I found that when you know that someone important believes in you and that you have that support system, it does wonders for your confidence and your stability.
It does. You have the support, and not only that, you have somebody who's fought the battles that you're fighting. You have somebody that has been there before and that knows the path through. And I think that's such a huge asset to have. When you're at that associate level and then you get up to the mid management level, it's important to keep within yourself, I believe, and also to not get wrapped up in all of the externalities that happen and all the politics that happen. Staying grounded and staying confident and speaking efficiently because you have such expansive minds. You see so much more in a room typically than the men do. We typically are very linear in terms of how we see things. How do you go about filtering that or grounding yourself and really getting to the point where not only are you speaking confidently, but what you're saying is being absorbed?
I always find it hilarious and like they're walking themselves into a mind trap when lawyers in closing argument ask for an hour and a half. And I'm like, I can do this in 10 minutes
Mhm.
because you lose the attention of everyone.
Yeah.
And while I still have to go through that process of the deeply overthinking analytical woman brain, I always remind myself to keep it simple, stupid. Dumb it down like you've never heard this before. Stick to 3 main points. Keep it as short as you possibly can. And then when I'm giving a presentation or I'm speaking in front of a jury, you have to be very aware of 3 main things, I believe. In most situations, there are some sentences that you have to say that aren't gonna be that exciting, but you have to get that information across. So
Mhm.
you treat them as though they're not exciting sentences. You can't be monotone the whole time. So you have to watch for tone and tenor, and then your speed. So if I'm going through a jury trial and I need to get through something quickly, but I want to pay attention to it, I'll just rapid fire real quick and then I'll come back to my normal speed. And then something that somebody taught me once was if you go into it knowing the first thing you're going to say and the last thing you're going to say, and you are so prepared, you've been on this forever, everything that falls in the middle doesn't really matter. People are going to remember the first thing you say and the last thing you say.
Mhm.
Repetition, of course, matters. Other two things I would say that matter are authenticity. You have to be yourself. You can memorize things if you want. You have to do that in the beginning, kind of to get used to it. But your style is not going to match the next person's style. And I didn't really understand what people said when they meant that until I
Mhm.
started doing it all the time. But I just don't feel comfortable saying certain things. It sounds fake.
Mhm.
Gotta
Mhm.
read the room, feel the energy. And if it's not working, then you gotta try something else. And the last thing I would say is don't do what I just did, which is to use a filler word. Don't start with but and as
Yeah. I think that brings up a good point because even I've been doing this for 10 years. I have 700. I still use the filler words and stuff, but I find that the more prepared I am and the more that I understand what the format is, it makes it a lot easier. And you don't use a bunch of those things because you stay on point. But what you're saying is that there is a technique to it and you should practice that technique.
I find that if I practice, then I don't come across as authentic.
Mm. How about practicing? And this is really for
Me
me. For a woman that's into a conversation and it's with a man or they're in the conference room with mostly men and she is trying to present something, how does she keep from over analyzing and from overthinking her process.
That's a great question. I think the older I've gotten, the more I've learned that if you just sit back and listen and only speak when it's important, because if you're it's natural with it when you're younger as a female in an important setting to feel very insecure about it. And what happens insecure about it if you're even almost an borderline extrovert, you are going to start like just talking. And then nobody's going to listen. And then when you sit back and listen, my first boss was so good at this, and he would just observe, and then he would just come in with the killer comment that would just shut everybody down. That's part of it. The other part is if you're giving a presentation, so that would just be if you're like an active participant in like a board meeting. If you're giving a presentation, then I treat a presentation like a closing argument or like a cross examination. I stick to my points and I don't care. I try to shut out what everybody else is saying. I don't care because it doesn't matter. I have to get my words and my points across. Stick to 3 points. And then when someone tries to mansplain and interrupt, my mansplain go to is, I'm not a moron. I understand XYZ. What I'm asking you is, which then just puts it back on them and
Right.
calls them out.
Calls them out. Yeah.
More often, what happens is the interruptions in court, in presentations, in the middle of a sentence, too. It's not as if they mistook it for like a pause for the ending of a discussion. That's the one that really pisses me off. And so I just say, I'm sorry. You just had your turn to speak. Now it's my turn. Please don't interrupt me again. That's it. And then whoever else is in the room with you will pick up on that, especially if you have to say it more than once. And now all of a sudden, because you've used polite words, but very assertively, and you've used few words.
You've established your boundaries. Yeah, 100%, which gains levels of respect. Do you think that's intentional with the interrupting halfway through, like consciously intentional? Or do you think it's more of a
Maybe,
subconscious thing?
maybe sometimes I think more often it's our society that has allowed, we live in a patriarchal society where most criminal defense lawyers are men. Like, I'm surrounded by men all the time in a male dominated profession. And I think that sometimes they do it to kind of see how far they can push you. But sometimes, or I'd say more often than not, it is just completely subconscious. I don't think that they do it
Mhm.
to their male colleague. And
Mhm.
interestingly enough, I don't recall ever being interrupted by a female lawyer.
Interestingly enough, right? How does a woman keep from qualifying herself in that situation? From reading off her CV, from especially in a reactionary situation to where she's around a bunch of men and they're maybe subconsciously or indirectly, passively, aggressively trying to keep baby in the corner type of a thing. How does a woman keep from having to qualify herself in that and just stick to her boundaries and stick to what she knows and the fact that she has every right to be at that table?
One of my favorite quotes is from Eleanor Roosevelt, who said that when you stop and look fear in the face, you you gain courage, confidence, and strength every time you stop and look fear in the face. Do the thing you think you cannot do. And I used to post that everywhere my first years of being a lawyer because I would have to remind myself of not doing that, not having to convince people that I deserve to be listened to. But it was the fear part that was keeping me back from being so authentic and genuine that I had to stop and think, okay, what's holding me back here? And you think, what is the worst possible thing? What's my biggest fear in life? That I get strangled by a snake? Is that going to happen because of the speaking situation? No.
Mhm.
Just go on and do it. You gain confidence and then you do it again. Or sometimes you lose and you butcher it and you
Mhm.
get up and you do it again. Confidence, I don't think is even a good enough word. It's a level of confidence. that I didn't find until I got completely knocked down by a horrible divorce, that
Mhm.
I then had to become so resilient that I did not care what anyone thought about what I was saying.
That's the
And
operative word.
that's
It's yeah.
for most people, the fear that comes with public speaking or speaking to anyone really is the societal expectations or disappointment that might come from it.
I've interviewed a lot of women and I've had and throughout therapy and I've doing that and just doing this, I've also worked with a lot of men. The one thing that I found is the most apparent is the fact that professional, somebody that's successful, the older they get, the more they don't care. And ultimately, when you don't care, when you release the expectation of or the need for somebody to be engaged or to approve or to prop you up or anything, once you let that go, it almost brings out this innate level of just confidence because it's just an assuredness. It's operating from who you are. It's presenting yourself and not performing and not selling yourself. And that's the huge shift that I've seen. How do you teach that to your young associates or to the C-suite women that are coming up so they don't get into the whole qualifying loop or they don't get into the whole overthinking things?
Can't fall into the trap of being distracted. You have to stick with what you came there to do, and you have to face fear. And until you get knocked down a few times and until you get back up a few times and get that success from it, it just takes time, and practice is the way to do it, but practice in a real setting, not practice in front of your mirror at home.
With the younger women, I think they have a lot of expectations that they need to do it perfect on the
Mhm.
first. And it's and you talk about a limiting belief, and it's going to keep you from taking chances and taking risks and making that speech and standing up or speaking up in the boardroom or in the courtroom. With all that being said, how do you go about working again with the younger women about
Mhm.
not trying to be perfect and getting them to understand that you're supposed to be awkward at the beginning and you're supposed to just do the best you can and then learn from every time that you are speaking to hone everything and to get better and better as you go instead of it's just that expectation is a killer.
It is, and I put that on expectation on myself. You just reminded me of a story when I was, I don't know, a third-year lawyer or something. I got appointed this huge case, and I called my mentor and said, "But how am I gonna do this and that and the other and na, 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 na?" And she's, "Take a deep breath, calm down. All you have to do is show up, Nicole."
Yeah.
And I tell myself that all the time because if you're prepared and you just show up and do your best, you're not gonna get in trouble for it. No snake's gonna come around your neck. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be hard, but it's just you have to go through it. But you did the perfectionism thing is such it is my worst trait, absolutely. And it drives me insane and it makes me procrastinate, hesitate, all the things.
Mhm.
But if you're aware of it, you can tell yourself, "Oh my gosh, just execute already." Another thing you can do is you can be sarcastic or humble enough to make fun of yourself in front of others. Like, I remember one time I walked into a courtroom last minute with a motion that was legally and procedurally sound for the last minute, but the judge did not like that it was last minute. And I just
Oh,
said, "Judge, I'm so sorry that I'm only brilliant at the last minute." And he
nice way.
hilarious.
That's funny. Yeah.
And and then the last thing I would say is that, and something that I think is really important to all this is that I noticed this when I was the leader of DWLA, is that I couldn't understand how some women would get really worked up about nothing and get angry about it. There are times when you have to pick the things that matter to you. You can't
Yeah.
get mad
Yeah.
about what's served at lunch and the Constitution at the same
Mhm.
time.
Right.
I call it having a personal constitution or even just like a backbone is fine.
Yeah.
You need to figure out who you are, what you're about, what matters to you, things that you're so passionate about that there is literally nothing that could stand in your way from getting up and speaking about it to anyone that matters, and with such confidence that you can't help yourself but to stand up and speak. That's when you reserve your voice.
And even in that context, you're the only person that expects you to know everything and have the answers to everything is you, because you don't. You
Right.
don't have all the answers because in any Q&A thing, or if you're speaking your mind and somebody comes back at you with, what about this or what about that? A lot of times people won't even speak up and they won't do the speech and they won't talk in the boardroom because they have this sense of, what if they say this and what if they say that? And I don't know the answers to that. Nobody knows the answers to everything. And don't let that keep you from doing what you need to do and from speaking up when you need to speak up. I think that's an important concept, especially when it comes, I would assume, when it comes to your job.
I've learned over the years that it really throws people off when they ask me a question that I'm not prepared for, to just say, I don't know. Do you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Which is a totally valid answer. And it's a bitter answer because you're staying in integrity. Instead of throwing out some BS stuff or doing a politician's dance around something and changing the subject, it's just because then people are like, oh, whatever. And then there's that bad vibe that goes out after that. That would be the best case
I
scenario.
have a really funny quick story. Is
Yeah.
my very first jury trial was in federal court in Oklahoma, representing a police officer on trial for almost 60 counts of corruption. I was co-counsel, but anytime I was at the stand examining a witness, the judge, it was this huge deal, media deal, like, whole thing. But my maiden name is Babbitt, and he would slam down his gavel like something out of My Cousin Vinny and go, Miss Babbitt, do you have any idea what you're doing? And I was like, no, I think so. Approach right now. And I just, got there and boldly assert myself like I knew what I was talking about. And every time it worked, but he was so surprised that I would be like, I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Again, be honest about it instead of BSing. For the YouTubers, you have a picture of RBG, which is one of my favorites, and Audrey Hepburn behind you. What do those women represent to you?
Wow. Audrey Hepburn reminds me, of course, of Breakfast at Tiffany's. It's the first thing I always think of. But her femininity was also a sign of strength because she didn't care how feminine she was, and she dared to be herself. And same thing with RBG. They represent the same thing, but I think that women should be. RBG obviously speaks for herself. I think her opinions are brilliant. She is consistent in her belief system. She had that personal constitution about her. She didn't care if she was always the center. She knew the Constitution like the back of her hand and always applied it the same way, whether you think it's right or wrong. So both of them represent a sign of strength of a woman. And what I think that we all need to accept is that if you want to be a mom forever, then be a mom, stay at home mom. That's great. If you want to go shopping at Tiffany's all day, great, good for you. If you want to be RBG, great, good for you. But make it your choice and don't let anyone get in your way to deter you from that. And anytime you hit a roadblock, get up and do it again.
I'm going to leave it at that. That was perfect. Thank you, Nicole Knox. Thank you so much. And
Yeah, of course.
where can somebody get in contact with you if they have any questions or comments?
Sure. Yeah. All my contact information is on my website at www.nicoleknoxlaw.com. And that's NICOLEKNOXLAW. I really appreciate that today.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a great conversation. And for me, it's theconfidencedoc.com or it's Tony at theconfidencedoc.com. I hope things are great, and I will talk to you next week.